Hi there guys, it's Mike from MCQBushcraft here, and welcome to another video. I've been out doing some hiking today. I've really just been following this river through this woodland as it snakes through, and while I've been following the river, looking along the edge of the actual river, you can see a lot of holes burrowed into the side of the river bank. That's a very good sign of a type of wild food that you can find when you're out on the trail, and being this a very shallow river, it makes it much easier to identify those kind of burrows and holes. And that's from crayfish actually burrowing in, and they stay in those little burrows, and obviously that's where they live and they come out and feed. And I found signs of crayfish. I found a very young one further down the river, and I've also found signs of them eating each other, which is what they generally do. And there are claws and parts of crayfish kind of scattered along the riverbed. Actually, while I'm sitting here, I can see a crayfish now, an American signal non-native crayfish, quite a large one, and I'll see if I can move in and get him. This is generally the way I catch them. I just throw a bit of rotten fish in the water and then lunge in and grab the crayfish. So there we go. That's got some pretty good claws on it as well. That's not the biggest one I've found, but that's a pretty good size, and the tail and claw meat out of that should be pretty good. But you can see why they call it the American signal. See these red claws? It's very easy to identify, and it will raise its claws up in like a defensive position really, where it's just trying to intimidate. That crayfish came out simply because I had some rotten fish scent on my hands, and I washed them in the river just before I put the bait down by the side of the river. So you can see they've got an incredibly good sense of smell, and if you put rotten fish in the water, which is a fantastic bait, then they will go straight to it. In fact, this one, never mind me, it's moving in for the actual bait now, and it's eating it right in front of me. But what I'll do is I'll get this one in the bag and we'll see if we can catch some more. I'll just take a piece of fish and just pop bits of fish in. Fortunately it sinks, so it's not going to drift away, and a lot of the burrows and holes and crevices that they're living in are just downstream of it, so hopefully they'll catch the scent and start to come out. But it shouldn't take too much to get them out, given how scarce food is around here. Movement should start to occur pretty quickly. And that should do it. We'll just wait. Go, got one more. Bit of a small one, but still add to the pile. That one's a bit better. This area's done, I think. Still plenty more crayfish, don't get me wrong, there are probably quite a few still around here. In fact, there's a gigantic one just there. I can just see one of the alphas come out. Got to be very careful. It's not so much the talking that's the problem, it's the movement. See? Gone. Just a little bit of movement, just a bit of vibration on the ground, and he's gone. And that one didn't have any claws, so it looks like it had been in a few battles. Well, I've had a pretty good morning anyway. Got quite a few crayfish, but I've just spotted one more very large one underneath the log just there. As I washed my hands and the scent came off into the water of the fish, he came out, and then as he saw me setting up the camera, went back in again. So I'm just going to get a little bit more bait out. I've got some wrapped up in the pack. Get it near him, we'll see if he can come out and I can get him. That's not a bad size, that one there. Got some big claws on him, so there'll be plenty of meat in that. Or quite a bit of meat anyway in those claws. He's quite a good one. If they were all like that, it'd be great. So I've been at this for a while now. Let's have a look at what we've got. There we go. So we got some pretty good sizes there. This one's probably one of the smallest. And we got some good sized ones. That one there's quite big. So's that one. Very good sizes there. Got some little ones, but being an invasive species I can't put them back. So they'll have to be eaten along with the rest of them. But that's not bad for about an hour's work of just sitting beside the river with some rotten fish, throwing it in and picking up what comes out. And you just have to be a little bit patient. But let's get these back in the bag and we'll go and get them cooked. That was a hell of a walk. Worked up quite a sweat, but this is a nice little spot with a bit of sunlight, Got some gravel here by the river so I can manage the fire quite easily, and water, and there's plenty of firewood around, so I think I'll stop hiking and stay around here. What I've done here is laid down something called a raft, and the ground is very damp and wet, and we don't want that to affect the heat of the fire, so we lay down dry wood, and this wood was all cut from dead standing trees, so meaning it's dead still in the tree because it's been very torrential. Obviously all the wood on the ground is sodden and completely soaked. So I've put a double raft here just to ensure a good bed of embers. You can stack them up and up and up and actually light them from the top, like a triangle almost, a pyramid burning down. And they burn for a very, very long time. But I'm putting this triangle just here, and this is an oxygen control triangle, and it just puts some distance between the tinder that's burning and the wood that needs to actually catch and become our fuel wood. The biggest way that fires are often lost is by smothering them and starving them with oxygen, and this really ensures that you can keep that distance and actually control the distance between the bundle and the tinder, and it's just a nice little method. But I've got some birch bark here in this tinder bag, some I've gathered the other day while I was out. I always do keep a little bit on me when I'm in very, very damp conditions in case things get quite dire, and that should really help us get our fire going. Now this can go on like that. You can see it creates a nice little gap, and the fuel wood can actually be lit, and if we find the flames dull, we lift and it will go brighter and brighter, but we don't really need to in this case, so we'll just leave it like that. Now the fire's rolling and we got some water on, let's have a look at some of these crayfish here. I caught a very, very large one on the way down. Just spotted it, and it's grabbing on to a lot of different things really. So we got quite a few in here. There's the big one. It's got some serious claws on him. So I think we'll start with that one there. There's a number of different ways you can use to dispatch crayfish. Some people just throw them straight in boiling water and they go in alive straight away, and if the water is at a full rolling boil, generally they die almost instantly. But a bit of a kinder way is severing the spinal cord, and then that actually allows you to remove the waste pipe as well, all in one, and just put it on the fire, either like this on a skewer or straight into boiling water again. I actually quite like boiling a lot of the shellfish I catch. I just find it a bit more of a sound method, but it's not really necessary. But I'll show you how to dispatch one. So you can take the crayfish just like this. There'll be a gap just behind its head there, and you can go in, sever the spinal cord, make sure you get it. There still can be a bit of movement afterwards, but that should dispatch it pretty quickly, just like that. And like any animal, there is a little bit of movement afterwards. It's just motors shutting down in that respect. And then in the tail there you have like a main fin just in the middle, just like that. You break that left then right till you hear a click, and then pull it, and you pull it just like that, and the entire waste pipe will come out just like this. So this is one way of cooking them. You can just pop them in boiling water. That crayfish has been in the pot for about 3 minutes, so let's take it off, have a look. There we are. Wow, look at that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So we take the tail off. This one's got a very small tail. Now we have the crayfish tail there. There we go, that's a very good bit of claw meat. If you want to get really fancy, I usually carry some oat cakes with me while I'm out in the field and have the crayfish meat on the actual oat cake, which is pretty good. That is something special when you're out in the woods. There are other ways of dealing with crayfish as well. You can skewer them if you're in a survival situation, for example, or had very limited equipment and didn't have a canteen on you to actually boil in. Then they can just be cooked over the fire, and I'll show you how to do that. It's very simple. Just dispatch them the same way, severing the cord there at the back, then take the tail again, and out comes the excreted tract there. And then what you can do is make yourself a skewer out of quite a thin piece of wood and just put it up the hole where the actual waste pipe came out, and it will just look like that, and then it can be stabbed in the ground and cooked over the fire. I've always been more fond of boiling them rather than skewering them. Maybe it's just my my habit really when it comes to shellfish, having spent quite a lot of time on the coastline. But I find it just more efficient. You're less likely to burn them, it's a more consistent way of cooking them. It's guaranteed heat in all areas, and you can cook a batch of them at the same time with very little materials other than a pot and some boiling water. And if you're communal, so there's 4 or 5 of you on the trail and you have a communal cooking pot, you could be catching them all day long, and at the end of the day throw 30 or 40 of them into the pot, boil them all and serve them up at the same time, and they'll all be cooked to perfection. Some may argue you lose a bit of flavour, but I've really never noticed it, and I just find it a much better way of cooking them. But these are almost done, and even though I've got a small pot there, you wouldn't believe that all the rest of the crayfish that I had in there, which was 7 or 8 of them, are in that little pot there cooking away. There we go. So these look really nicely done. You can see how just boiling them is just quite a simple way of dealing with them. And they all cook very consistently and they're ready to be eaten. And this one here looks like it's going to be the first. Their tails are actually quite small around here. These are pretty small crayfish in the grand scheme of things, but that's why numbers are the key. It's fiddly work this, but not too much so. I think it's quite a nice thing in a way. It slows you down. eating can be a very fast thing these days, but if there were 5 or 6 of you sitting around a campfire, then yeah, it would be something that you'd be doing for quite a few hours, just sitting there and talking and eating. And they're very, very easy to prepare, really. But I'm just getting all of the meat off that I want, and then I can actually just sit down and eat. Before I tuck into the rest of these crayfish and have them with my oatcakes, and I've also got some water as well, I'll just point out that these crayfish are non-native. They're an invasive species. The American signal is an invasive species that you'll find in a lot of the waters now in parts of the British Isles, and they wipe out the native crayfish. They're bigger, they're stronger, they carry a disease as well, and this disease can be spread by spores in the water, and it can actually kill the native crayfish. These are immune to it, our native ones aren't. This is why the licensing process to be able to go out really and do this, and to catch them legally in traps, small lobster pot like traps, is very strict, simply because they're notorious for escaping, and if you're walking around in these waters where the spores will be, you could transfer them back to waters that may have native crayfish in if you live by them, and they assess all of this when they effectively issue a license. The Environment Agency and the landowner's permission is required to be able to do this. So if you are interested in doing this kind of thing, please see the description below, but do be aware that this video is more of a demonstration to everybody out there. For people overseas watching, a lot of my audience is from the United States and Canada, and you know, a lot of people over there have crayfish like this, and they go out into the wilderness, and there's potential to be able to catch them and add them to the supplies you bring with you. Or if you're in a survival situation, you could need them as well to actually sustain yourself and live a little bit longer out there. It's basically a very, very good wild food to be able to find, and it uses very little resources from your body, very little energy to be able to catch them. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you again for watching, for everybody out there who supports the channel. I hope you found this very useful for those of you who have crayfish around and are looking to go out and catch them. And I'll see you very soon in another video. Thanks again, guys, and take care.